Have you been diagnosed with bipolar disorder? About 8 years ago, I received the same diagnosis. I remember I was in the doctor's office. I originally came in there for mental health stuff. I was not in a good place in my life at the time. I was really struggling with a lot of transition, a lot of things out of my control when I was a teenager. And he gave me this survey, rated these things 1 to 5, basically just some DSM diagnoses of surveying me questions and diagnosing me with bipolar. And he also asked me the history of my parents. He asked me if my mother and father had any kind of mental health issues, and I told him that my mother is a narcissist and she has major depressive disorder. My father is an alcoholic and also schizophrenic. And I remember looking at the reaction on his face after I gave him this information, and it really made my heart drop. It really made me feel like I had lost a sense of hope. And not only that, he told me I had bipolar, and he had these recommendations of different medications I could try, this and that, and I was basically fed this belief of something was intrinsically wrong with me. Basically, the way I was born, my genetics, the cards I was dealt with, the brain I was born with, something's wrong with it. Something's wrong with my emotions. Something's broken within me. And this external medication was going to fix that. And so I tried this. Tried different medications for 2 or 3 years, and that was quite a roller coaster. The stage of life I was in was already pretty hard, and the medications didn't do what I wanted them to. They didn't directly address or take away the issue, and I just kind of felt numb to life. I was suicidal. I was super just on the struggle bus. I was just not doing good, and a lot of it was operating under this core belief of something's wrong with me. When I would see relationships that I had not pan out well, it's challenging for me to get close to people, and I would act out of emotion. I would blame it on this diagnosis. I would say there's something wrong with me, and it's out of my control. Now, the people I talked to in mental health really supported medication. Therapists, counselors, anybody I talked to with that, they're like, well, if you had some kind of condition with your liver, wouldn't you take liver medications? It's like, well, yeah, of course. But from a holistic perspective, there's other things we could do with a liver condition, right? We can control what we put in and out of our body. We can control exercise, our self-care. And so, as much as it was reinforced into me that medications are good, I began to get skeptical of like, is this genuinely the solution to me being bipolar? Because it was getting to the point where I was alone, I was pushing people away from me, I was isolated, and I was self-medicating at that point. I was done using pills and I was just getting high. And I think over time, the severity of my addiction and how much I used, I began to develop more mental health issues on top of it. The bipolar swings would get even more intense, and then also, it got to the point where I heard like audible voices that weren't there. And I was like, well, now I'm schizophrenic. And so it got to a point where I was like, okay, I need to take matters into my own hands. And I challenged this belief system. I challenged this belief of something's wrong within me. The way I feel is not good. So I need something outside myself to fix something within myself. I need some kind of recreational substance like marijuana or psychedelics or something to change this, or I need some kind of medication prescribed by a doctor to change the hurt and the pain, stuff that was going on in here. But where I started to shift was I began to understand that there wasn't anything really wrong with me. The only thing that was wrong was my view of the world. Because I viewed the world, because I viewed myself in this way, I acted in a certain manner. My behavior followed. And so the real healing came in when I started to challenge this belief of, is there something wrong with me? And this is a practice. This is something I still deal with today. And it's a lot of practice of self-acceptance, self-love, even when I don't feel good, being like, this is okay. And so over time, adopting this new belief system, challenging these beliefs that aren't serving me, I began to understand that my fate, my destiny isn't the same as my parents. My genetics aren't my fate. I have control. I have the power to choose a different path and to heal these wounds from my past. And so subtracting, trying to minimize the external substances, the unhealthy coping mechanisms of doing drugs, pills, recreational substances. Over time, doing less of that, I had to learn how to cope in a healthy manner. I started to do things like exercise, meditation, to do things that in the moment when I'd get really sad or depressed or feel hopeless, something to shift, something to get through it. Taking matters into my own hands rather than being like, woe is me, let me get help from the outside. And so today, I don't do any drugs. I'm in recovery for smoking weed. That used to be a daily struggle for me. If I wasn't working, I was high. Today, I am about 8 months. It's been that I haven't used nicotine, about 9. And I haven't drank coffee in 5 months. I haven't drank caffeine in 5 months. And it's amazing to me how much more power I have within myself, how much more natural energy I have, and how I don't really have to stress out about balancing myself, balancing my emotions, balancing my hormones, neurotransmitters, serotonin, all that stuff. Because having a vape and having that guilt trip of like, should I hit this now? I know I shouldn't. Same thing with weed. It's stressful trying to make that decision of like, should I do this or not? Now, I accept what I can do to do things intrinsically, to challenge my thoughts, to meditate, to do other things to address what's going on in here, rather than being like, let me avoid what's going on in here by using external substances. And so I'm blessed to say that I do not fit a diagnosis for bipolar anymore. I don't hear voices anymore. And adding more things into the mix wasn't helping that equation at all. So I hope you found this video helpful. And if you are struggling out there, I pray that you can find some peace in the storm, because a lot of what the struggles we go through can teach us very important lessons in our life. Thank you for watching my video.